Ellen Nicholson is one of the senior counsellors at Woking, responsible for leisure, health and well-being and several other areas. Morning to you.
Good morning, James. Thanks for having me on this morning.
What's the aim of the consultation? What did you want to hear from people?
So we really want to hear what people's views are around the proposals that we heard just then in the clip. We want to know what's important to them. Obviously, we've already had one resident engagement consultation. This is the second one, really, but this is the statutory consultation that's just closed. We had nearly 6,000 responses, and that local feedback is vital for us for making those really difficult decisions that are coming up in February's budget meeting next year.
And have you been looking through what people have been saying as the consultation's actually been on?
So I think that's been obvious, actually. There's been a lot across social media. I've been out talking to people on the street and in the community centres at Pool in the Park. So, kind of eliciting all those responses from people and finding out their feelings. Obviously, now the consultation's closed, we'll be analysing the results and they'll be brought back to council. So I don't have those at the moment. But I can't imagine they're going to be that different from the responses we've heard on the street and in social media.
Right, OK. Well, we heard from the local MP, the Conservative Jonathan Lord, and he was saying that the savings from cutting Pool in the Park aren't as much as originally stated. Is that something that you will actually take another look at?
So actually, what we've been doing as a kind of executive group led by Councillor Anne-Marie Barker is we've put together a finance task group, which is cross-party. So we're trying to be as open and transparent as possible. It's led by opposition councillors, and there are all the other opposition councillors in there as well, looking at all these different financial trajectories for our kind of community centres, for Pool in the Park as well. So, that's ongoing work at the moment. And obviously we're talking to resident groups as well. So we're talking to the kind of community action task force, which is the swimming pool residents. We're talking to the swimming club. We've been talking across the board to kind of various stakeholders. So we're taking everybody's opinion into account.
Are you not worried, Ellen, that really that the old phrase, the squeakiest wheel gets oiled first? It's like the people who make the most noise will be the ones that you possibly appease. And it's maybe some small charity or small organisation which hasn't got that sort of broad appeal that really are going to be hit hardest.
I think there is a risk there. So we're doing kind of equality, diversity and inclusion, those impact assessments. Surrey County Council has been really, really helpful in helping us to formulate those. So obviously we have to take those into account as well. Because you're right, people can have a loud voice sometimes on particular issues, but actually we need to be focusing on our most vulnerable residents in the borough who may not have quite as loud a voice.
Well, I don't envy you and your other councillors for making some decisions here, because some people are going to get pretty upset by what's going to happen, aren't they?
It's incredibly difficult, James. I think, the scale of the challenge ahead of Woking Council and making these decisions can't be underestimated. We've got this inherited financial situation. We've got to deliver statutory services. We don't actually have the funds for discretionary services. I mean, just taking Pool in the Park, for example, in the government, they mandate swimming lessons for Key Stage 1 and 2, and yet leisure services don't have mandated funds. So, there's a real conundrum that has to be made there. It's not an easy situation. And essentially what we're trying to do is we're trying to make changes to the services and make them self-funding. And do the work in kind of months, whereas many councils take years to bring their kind of services to this point. It's a speeded up process, which is incredibly challenging.
Ellen, do you see any positives out of this whole situation at all?
There's positives, actually. I think, understandably, residents are incredibly anxious about the changes to come and uncertain, I think, as well, because, this is going to carry on till February in the budget meeting. But actually, we've had so many residents come forwards and community groups come forwards with really, really good ideas that we're looking at. I think, that's a real positive, that actually we've got that community engagement around these services and how we can look at making them run differently. So I think that's a very big positive. Thank you.
6,000 individual responses from people. Is that more than you expected?
I think if you look at the scale of the resident engagement consultation, it's slightly less, actually. I think we had around about 9,000 responses, but it's still a huge number of people. I don't believe that either any of the responses to previous surveys have been quite as big as these last two consultations, which I think shows the importance of these services and the challenges for Woking and our residents.
And when do we actually hear, when will the decisions start to really become, concrete?
So all of these proposals, as I say, we're working on them at the moment, and there's a huge amount of work going on in the background, and I'm incredibly grateful to the council officers for the time they're putting in. They all come back to our February Budget Council meeting, and that's where the decisions actually get made. So we've still got time to kind of work on those proposals. We're still looking to hear from people, speaking to our residents, but there's still an immense amount of work to do before we get to February next year.
Ellen, thanks so much for coming on the show and just explaining more of that. Ellen Nicholson, one of the senior councillors at Woking, responsible for leisure, health and well-being.